episode in terms of Python programming. Today we're going to look at a few different things. We're going to start off with this program that we had before, and we're going to look at how we overcome potential problems when we're trying to convert a string to a float, particularly when we're getting inputs like we are here. So if we look at the first one, so I'll just move the code down a little bit. We said before that if we run this and we put in a value that is not a floating point value, then the conversion won't work and we'll get an error, and we don't want that for the user. So in Python we've got some very useful things. It's something, first of all, we're going to look at is try, and if we do that, we move that onto line. So we're going to try to do that line, and then if it doesn't work, so we've got an except clause, we can set speed, in this case equal to 0. Now that's not ideal for us, but it will stop the program from crashing. So if I just run this program a few times, so I haven't done anything with distance yet, and we're just going to run this program a few times and see what happens. So if I run it, say OK, it says average speed, and if I put in 56, number of miles 120, so it's 2 hours 8 minutes, that's working fine. If I run it and I type in 56 mph and then 120, I'm still going to get an error message because I'm trying to divide by 0. But you can see that speed has actually been a 0 that's been entered. So I've overcome one problem, I've still got another problem, but we'll look at that in a short while. It's different to the message I get if I type in 56 for this and then I type in 120 miles, then I get my error message saying I can't convert a string to a float. So I've overcome my string to float problem, although setting it to 0 didn't really help. But we're partway there. So try and accept is a useful thing to have. What I really need to do though is if I go round and say while true, so now I've got a while statement and I'm going to go around while true. So that's going to be an infinite loop. It's going to just keep going round and round and round that loop. I can say also, if I just do this, I can say if, which we saw last time, if speed is less than, no, I'll do it the other way. If speed is greater than 0, then I'm going to break out of that loop. Else, I'm going to print an error message. So I'm going to say print, and I'm going to put error value out of range. So if I just go through this code before I run it, I've got a while loop and I've set that to true. So I'm going to keep going around that loop while it's true, and it's going to be always true because I don't do anything to change it from true. I've then got my try statement, and we've seen that work. So if I try to enter that, if that works, that's fine, I'll get a value for speed. Except if it doesn't work, I'm going to set speed to 0. I've then got my little if statement which says if speed is greater than 0, because I haven't got an upper limit but I want it to be greater than 0, so if it's greater than 0, I'm going to break out of my loop. That's what the break statement does. It's going to jump out of my loop, which is what I want. But if it's not greater than 0, it's going to print an error message to say out of range. So we've got two new things here. We've got the try except, and we've also got a while loop. So if I run that, and we can see how that works. So if I put in 56 mph, I've got value out of range, and it's asked me to input it again. So if I just put in my 56, I haven't got any checking on the other one, so I'll just put 120. You can see I've got some error checking now. And validation is always useful in programming. So what we can do is put the same validation around the other loop. Sorry, the other input. So it will be a second loop. Okay, if I put this loop around here again, so I can say while true, try, and we can put our except. Right, so we've got that second one done. I think I've got everything right. I'll just give it a quick run just to try it. So we run now, say OK, and our speed we're going to enter as 56. We'll put 120 miles, value out of range. If we put 0, it's out of range, so we'll put 120, and our program works. So there we've used our while loop, not the best way. Now there is an issue with this in that we've essentially got the same code twice, and in the next lesson we'll look at how we can overcome that. But for now we'll leave it as it is. We've got a while loop, we've got a try and accept. The try and accept you can use to trap out any errors that you might get. So if you think you might get an error at runtime, you can use the try and accept. It doesn't just have to be on inputs, it can be used for other things as well. We'll come across it again, and the if statement and the else statement you've seen in a previous lesson. Okay, so we'll move on now to another type of loop, or another way of using loops. Okay, we're going to start a new program. This one is going to be quite different. So we're going to ask the user for how many numbers they want to enter. They're going to enter that many numbers, and then we're going to find the average of all those numbers they've entered. Now, just to keep it simple, we just want to look at a different way of using a loop. So we're not going to do the error checking or the validation as we've just seen. We're just going to trust the user to put the right values in. Okay, but normally you would use validation on all your inputs. So I've done the first line, so it's count, and we're going to ask the user to enter a value. We're then going to set another value, so I'm going to call it I, and we're going to set that equal to 0. Okay, we're going to set a total, and again we're going to set that to 0. Okay, and what we're going to do is have a loop, and we're going to say while I is less than count. We're going to ask the user to enter a number. So number equals, we'll use float. Float input enter value. Let's not forget the quotes. And then we're going to add the total. So total equals total plus number. Okay, and then we're going to increase I by 1 as well, so we're going to say I equals I plus 1, and that is our while loop. So if I just print out the total following that, so print total we won't worry too much about formatting that because we're going to get rid of it in a minute. If I just run this program, oops, comma missing, try again, we'll run the program. How many numbers do I want to enter? I'll enter 3, enter value 3, 4, 5, and my total is 12. I think that's about right. Okay, so we've got a loop that goes round and it enables us to enter however many numbers we choose, and it adds those together. We just look at what's happening with the while loop. So we've got while I is less than count. Well, when we first come into the loop, count is going to be whatever value we've set it to, and I is 0. So I, which is 0, is going to be less than count, which we set to 3. We then ask them to enter a number. They add that number to the total, and then we increase I by 1. So I is now 1. We've come to the end of the loop, but we go back round again and we check the value of I against count. It's 1 and count is 3, so it's still less than 3, so it goes round again, gets increased again, so it's 2. We go around again, so it's 2 is less than 3. Yes, it is. So we do those instructions again. Now I has been made equal to 3. When we come up here, 3, is it less than 3? No, it's not. So we stop going around the loop. We don't go through the instructions, we just jump around them and we go to the next instruction in the program. So that's how our while loop actually works. Now, if we didn't have this line in, so if I take that line out, if I comment that line out there, so we haven't got that increase now. If I run the program, it all looks the same. I'm going to enter 3 numbers, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We've got an endless loop. We're going to keep going because we haven't increased I. So I is still set to 0, and it's always going to be 0. Okay. So if we do Control C, we can actually stop that program working. So if I set that back, the question was, can we actually calculate the average? Well, yes, we can. We can say print, and then average is, and it's going to be the total divided by the count that we had. Oops. Just put my comma in and I'll run that. Hopefully we get the right answer. So we'll enter our three numbers again, and we'll have 3, 4, 5, and our average is 4. So that's another way of using the while loop. We can actually set a condition and only go around that set number of times. Okay, before we finish off with this program, I just want to show you how we could change a couple of the lines. So here, this way of writing it out, total equals total plus number, that is the accepted way in most programs. Similarly, I equals I plus 1. There is a shorthand way of doing it, so we can actually say total plus equals number. So that's the same total equals total plus number. We can do the same in this line here. So we can say plus equals 1. So again, we're adding 1 on to I. It's just a shorthand version of writing it, and it's the accepted way in a lot of programs, particularly Python. So if we just run that just to prove that it works, so we can enter our three numbers, enter 3, 4, 5, and we get the answer that we were expecting. So just a shorthand version which you may want to use. If you don't want to use it, it doesn't matter, but it can save a little bit of typing. Okay, there is another loop in Python, and that is the for loop, and that enables us to actually shorten this code even more. So we still need to ask for how many numbers we want to input. We don't need this line here, setting I equal to 0. We don't need to increase I within the loop, and the only thing we need to change is this bit here. So in the for loop we write for I in range count, and what that will do, that will control the whole loop process for us. So it will take I as started at 0. It will then check if it's in the range of the count variable or the value that we've put in there, and it will increase I by 1 every time we go around automatically. So it's a much shorter way of writing the same program. So if I run this just to prove 3, 3, 4, 5, we've got exactly the same thing calculated. So a lot of people prefer, if you know how many times you're going around the loop, as you are here, a lot of people prefer to use the for loop. It is certainly much neater. One thing you will know if you've come from other programming languages, the syntax of the for loop is very different in Python compared to other languages. Personally, I think it's quite a lot neater in Python. Okay, we'll leave it there for the time being.